and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you for letting me come and just be a part of this. I would like to start just by saying thanks to all of the people who are on this call or who will be watching the recorded version of it, because you've decided you want to be a part of something great, that you want to be a part of something in these girls' lives that will change the trajectory of their position forever. So that's a really big deal, and I just want to acknowledge that and say thanks. The second thing is I want to apologize for being incredibly unprofessional and doing this from inside my car. But some other stuff came up, but I didn't want to miss this, and I wanted to try and just be a part of as many things as I could. So I apologize for the unprofessional atmosphere of being in my car right now, but thanks for the grace with that. Like Dr. Natalie mentioned, I refer to myself as foster care alumni. Now that means I grew up in foster care. And a lot of times people in my situation, we call ourselves former foster youth. And I just don't really like that. I don't think it's really encouraging or empowering. And I think it kind of takes us from wherever we are now in life and puts us right back to where we were in the middle of like the thick of it, right? In the middle of the trauma and the drama. So I don't like it. So I refer to myself as a foster care alumni. And if you want to take that phrase and spin it and use it, it's free. You can have it. I grew up cumulative to the best of my knowledge between 30 and 40 different foster homes that I can remember. And I love now in my life that I can be a part of foster care awareness and influence and impact without myself being a foster parent, because not everybody can or should be foster parents. And I think it's important that we know ourselves and know how we can impact this population and this community in a way that is honest and full of integrity at every turn, right? So I have 2 kids of my own. That's really all I want. So I want to impact foster care in other ways without myself being a foster parent. And I think you're probably in a similar place where you want to impact foster care. I like being on this side of it and having my perspective, because when I grew up in all the foster homes that I was in, it was like my only time of respite. It was where I felt like I could finally relax and just be a kid and just have peace in my heart and not having to worry about, do I have to protect my mom? Do I have to make sure she's not mixed pills and alcohol again? Do I have to stay awake all night to make sure she doesn't hurt herself? Things like that. Am I going to have to steal food so we can eat today? So when I was in foster care, I just got to be a kid, and I just got to rest and have peace in that. And out of all the places and placements that I was in, I was never abused. I was never neglected. And I don't even remember being yelled at, which is a big deal because I was rough. Whoa, I was like such a bad kid. I loved being naughty. I loved being destructive. I loved destroying things. I loved getting good kids to do bad things. I was not an easy kid to work with. And because I had a history in my life of violence and fighting, not every placement would take me. So a lot of times my placements were group home type facilities for kids with violence and violent tendencies. So all that to say, I'm growing up, right? And even as I'm 18 and I'm trying to navigate life on my own, my view of the world was very skewed. And I think we all lean into our life experiences and things that our parents taught us or things we learned growing up to form our worldview and how we move forward, how we interact with people. And for me, one of the things I knew for sure to be absolute truth was that I was unlovable. Because that was a whole lot easier to stomach than saying my mom just chose not to love me, or she chose drugs instead of loving me and taking care of me. So I just took on the identity of a person who was unlovable. And so because that was one of my only things I believed to be absolute truth, I did whatever I could to maintain that truth. So it became a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in my life where I operated 100% full of venom and thumbtacks. I was mean all the time. My claws were out all the time. I was always on the offensive. I was always ready to do whatever I could, not just to protect myself, but to have a posture of someone who was going to attack first, so that people knew they couldn't get one over on me. Because in my mind, that's what everybody was going to do. So I mention that because as you work with these young people, there's a good chance they will be full of venom and thumbtacks. There's a really good chance that they will not be easy folks to interact with. They might believe also that they are unlovable, and they will probably try to prove that at every opportunity with their interaction with you. So if you're looking for something easy to do as a volunteer experience every once in a while, this is probably not for you. And I say that not to chase you away, but to know that this is going to take a lot of commitment and love and desire to do something good without necessarily getting a whole lot in return. And that's not to say you won't ever, but you probably won't right away. Good example of this. When I was 11 years old, I accepted Jesus as my Savior. And I went from a foster home to summer camp, back to a foster home when it was finished, a different foster home. And as I'm sitting there, I'm laying in my top bunk at Camp Kuratli, which is the Salvation Army summer camp in Oregon, in Boring, Oregon. Not just my adjective, it's really a town called Boring. Yeah. And I'm laying in my bed, and my camp counselor does this devotion all about the prayer of salvation and accepting the Lord. And in my head and in my heart, I was thinking, man, I want Jesus more than I want breath in my lungs. I know that if I have Christ in my life, I know if I accept Jesus, I'm never going to be alone again. I know he's going to be with me no matter what, and I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to always be loved. But when my counselor approached my bunk and she says, hey, Lisa, do you want to accept Jesus? Even though all of that was going on here and here, what came out was, yeah, I guess so, whatever. Because even in my desire to accept the Lord, I couldn't let people know I had a legitimate need. I couldn't let people ever know I was in a position of deficit, because in my mind that showed weakness. And so even though I wanted it and I knew what it meant, still my demeanor and my posture to her was very defensive and unkind, even in accepting the Lord, which is bonkers, right? So she prayed with me the prayer of salvation, even though I was only full of spice about it. And then when she said amen, I said thanks. And I rolled over and I silently just cried into my pillow for forever until I fell asleep, thinking today's a new day. It's never going to be the same again. But I still couldn't let anybody know that. So friends, as we journey through this together as mentors for girls that have been in really tough situations, just know that no matter what you see presented, there is great fruit happening. There is great fruit happening. And part of their survival tactics may be to operate with spice, with venom and thumbtacks, with their claws out. But that doesn't mean they don't care. That doesn't mean they're not present. It might just mean that's what they need to do to keep themselves safe. I really love the opportunity to work. Sometimes I call it like being foster care adjacent. And I really think that's a great privilege. And what's so cool in our world now is that we're hearing more and more stories of people who have been in foster care. And I mean, it's not cool that people are in foster care. And I think people have been in foster care. We've just all kept it a secret, right? I know for myself growing up, I went to seminary to be a pastor. And I lied about my family. I kept my foster care experience a secret because I was afraid of the stigma. I was afraid of who I was. I met my husband and I wasn't really honest with him about my foster care experience, because part of me was thinking, if he knows that nobody's ever really loved me, maybe he will decide I'm not worth being loved either. But I think that stigma is changing a little bit. I'm hearing more stories of people being open about their foster care experience, and not just if it was horrific, because there are some of those stories also, but I'm hearing more stories that are similar to mine about the foster care experience being really a beautiful time, where I was free. I remember being in foster care and trying a pear for the first time. I think I was 15, and we never had fruit. We never had fruit. We never had vegetables, except for like the canned ones we would get from the food bank. And I remember I was at my foster family's house and they had a bowl of pears. And I had had canned pears before, and those are disgusting, right? I don't know why those exist. It's like wet sand, like you're eating a halfway sandcastle. So I don't know why those exist and why people pretend like that's good, because they're not good. But I had had canned pears. I'm like, whoa, that's disgusting. And so there's this bowl of fresh pears, and my foster parent was like, do you want to try one? I'm like, no, pears are gross. And she's like, these ones are perfect. And I remember just trusting her enough to try a pear, and it was like the scales had like dropped from my eyeballs. And I thought, what else is there? What else is there in this world that could be good, that I had this very incorrect preconceived notion was not for me and was bad? But I had been sold like the bunk version, right? My whole life I'd been sold the bunk version of the things, the bunk version of the pears. I'd never had a fresh real pear, and they're not the same, right? And so I think these experiences could really lead to eye-opening journeys for these people. Not just in a way that you're sad for them, you know? I think that kind of hurts me a lot when I tell people that I was in foster care, or what my growing up was like, and then instantly all I see is them like just pity, you know? Oh, that's so sad for you. Like, I know it's not ideal, but don't pity me, you know? Look at where I am. Look at where I am now. Clearly, like, it wasn't all a wash, because I've been married for almost 17 years to the same guy consistently. We have 2 beautiful kids who have never, ever, ever known what it's like to have a mom who was ever intoxicated, who was ever neglectful, who was ever choosing drugs or anything else above their children. I have a formal education. I've written books. Like, please don't pity me. I think honor the journey, right? Honor the journey, respect where we've been, and let's just move forward together. And I think these kids that you will interact with will often feel the same. They may not have the verbiage like I've just done, but nobody wants to be pitied, you know? And I just say these things because I know that this has kingdom value in our world, but for eternity. And I just think it's really beautiful what we're here to do together. So I just wanted to have some space to dialogue with you and maybe answer some questions. I wanted to leave a little bit more space than what is normally asked for question and answer, because I get a little long-winded when I respond. So I wanted to make space for that. So what do you guys think? Any of these things that I'm talking about kind of bring anything to mind, or any questions you might have?
Please ask her questions. You're talking to one of the experts here, because not only did she experience it, but Lisa continues to work with that population. She loves God, loves people, and it comes out in everything that she does. You know, those, some of you may have participated in or heard about the Brave Conference. And when those girls came into that facility, actually I said when they left that facility, you could tell that they had been touched by just the spirit of what was going on there. So as we consider mentoring girls aging out of foster care and interacting with that population, you need to know as much as you can know.
I have one.
Lenora, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I work with young people off and on in various different ways over the years, but I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the biggest mistakes people make when they do start interacting? What are the dumbest things sometimes we do, so we can avoid the obvious ones that we aren't always as obvious as we think?
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I would call them dumb mistakes. Maybe just a misstep. You know, be gracious with yourself. Let's start with that. That's the first one. You just made it.
Yay.
I'm just kidding. Totally kidding.
Do it often.
Just, you know, be gracious with yourself as we move forward. And I think don't assume that you know. I think that's probably number one. Don't assume that you know their stories. Don't assume that you know what they need. Don't assume that you know how they will communicate best. I think just entering into that relationship fully with taking the posture of a learner and a listener, and kind of letting them know from the jump, like, I actually don't have all the answers, but I'm just really excited I get to be a part of this with you. And maybe I see myself as a person who's going to affirm and acknowledge the truth that's already there. You already have this. You are already brave and bold and wise, and you have been through more things than most people ever have their entire life. And I'm just here to be a part of that with you and support you any way that you tell me you need. But I think it's incredibly off-putting for a kid who's grown up like I have, where someone comes and they think because they're an adult or their life was different that they have all the answers. So kind of taking into consideration, this girl might be 18 years old in her numerical age, but like for me, I was on my own since I was 7 years old. So it's almost like when I was 7, I was 18. So by the time I was 18, I was that much older, in my mind, in my body. I knew how to prepare meals. I knew how to take care of myself. I knew how to hustle. I knew how to hustle because I had to survive. So just because chronologically she's 18, she may have a wealth and depth of life experience that kind of might blow your mind. So don't come in like you have all the answers is the short answer. And then I think, not deciding that we're the ones to say if something is good or bad, right? Like, oh, well, that maybe was a bad choice you made. Instead of saying that, say, can we just talk about why that choice was made? Let's get to the root of that, and kind of helping them unpack things instead of us deciding we are the keepers of the knowledge and the wisdom to give them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And even that term bad, good, it just derails the whole conversation off of let's understand each other. Let's talk through this.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
really
sometimes what we might describe as good or maybe more so bad was part of their survival guide. So what is worse, doing a bad thing or doing something that would damage you forever?
Mm-hmm.
So it's tricky. It's a tricky thing to navigate.
It's a great question, Lenora. Other questions while we have Miss Lisa? Captain.
Hi, Lisa. This is Jennifer.
Hi.
Lenora actually asked the question that I was going to ask. So I just want to thank you for clearly and easily explaining this and sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm just glad that we get to be here and that you guys are willing to do this. And Dr. Natalie mentioned the Brave event, so I should mention that too. That might be helpful for resources as you guys move forward. I'm a Salvation Army officer, which is why I'm wearing this incredibly attractive shirt made of polyester that has no stretch or give and is incredibly hot in Las Vegas. But I'm also a part of an organization, nonprofit called Brave Global, and you can check out their website at braveglobal.org. And there's just more information on what this looks like and resources. And it's a genuine global movement of people impacting foster care. At first it was just girls. Now we have a boys program called True, which is really cool. I wrote the first set of curriculum for Brave, about half of the second set, and gave it to my friend Cheryl to finish off. And I helped edit the boys program. So some really exciting stuff with that too.
Lisa, are you guys doing it in Vegas?
I'm working on it. I'm trying to decide. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm really trying to decide and discern if Vegas needs a Brave, because my first thought of course it needs it. Everybody needs it.
Right.
But there's a lot here for kids in foster care. So I feel I'm almost wondering if I have a Brave, if I'm oversaturating the market. So I'm thinking if that's the best way for me to go, or if it is just for me to plug into what is already happening and support in that way. But I am coaching Brave people all over. I've recently been coaching folks in Iceland on doing a Brave event, which is super cool. And then also out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Elevation Church, I think is going to do Brave this summer if everything works out. And they're a pretty big church over there. So that's exciting stuff too.
Do you know if Nancy's going to do a Brave here, if there's going to be a Brave here?
I hope so. I've been trying to touch base with her. We keep missing each other. I think there will be. It may take a little bit, but I'm hoping that there will be.
Okay, for any of you that if they do a Brave here that can volunteer for Brave, you'll see a lot of Celebrate 18 in Brave, because I pretty much took a lot of things from them because I'm not into reinventing the wheel, and their wheel was running so well. I just, copied that. If you're interested in really hearing or reading more of Lisa's story, her book, Love to a Whore's Daughter, is her bio. And I did check, it's still available on Amazon. We gave it out at Brave, and then I've given out a couple of them. And also her Brave journal that's given to the young ladies, we give those out at Celebrate as well. Because again, it's coming from a person with lived experience. When I connected with my very first mentee from foster care that was in foster, and I asked her, what is it that you want from a mentor? Because I had already learned that I didn't know everything. I wasn't going to walk in with this assumed knowledge and patent answers. And she said, I just want somebody to listen. And I'm like, ooh, I don't have to do any prep work. And for an entire school year, she just talked. She talked. That was 6 years ago. We're still in contact. And I've learned so much. And I had no problem saying to her, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Or how did that come about? And I let her talk. And at one point, she sent me a note saying that she appreciated the fact that I would ask about things I didn't know and not assume or give her an answer that, what I had seen on TV, where else was I going to get that information from? So as you're considering being a part of the program and considering mentoring, and we've intentionally spaced these sessions because we don't want emotional decisions. You can't from an emotional standpoint say, oh yeah, I want to help. And then you get in there and that girl calls you something other than what your mother named you. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And that could be hurtful. Lydia wants to know the title of the book. Lisa, give her the title of the book because I might have messed it up.
No, you got it. It's called Love to a Whore's Daughter. And then there's a subtitle that's extra long. But if you look that up on Amazon, you can find it. And if you want, you can get it for free as an e-download if you're into Kindle reading, iPad reading, from newfrontierpress.org, which was my publisher. You can get it for free from them if you want. I don't get any money from it either way, so get it for free.
Any other questions? Because I know Lisa has to run. She's in the middle of an event right there in Vegas where she lives and is ministering now. Donna?
Yes, hi Lisa. Thank you so much. I will always remember when you was our keynote speaker to a group of foster students who were graduating from high school. And you did such a phenomenal job. And the thing that I remember most is that down to earth, real, I'm sharing it like it is. So what I'd like you to speak to is how to engage, how to connect. Because oftentimes we as an adult are the adults, they're the kids. You have that automatic generational divide. But the biggest thing with kids and foster care is those experiences that most of us know nothing about. So what's the best thing to engage and stay committed to that engagement?
Yeah, I think just asking them, like, what do you think is something really important to know for me to know about you? Like, what do you like? What do you love? How would you spend your free time if you had a whole day and no responsibilities? What would you do? And then when they say things, just remember them. They may say things that you have no idea what they're saying. They may like a very specific type of anime, which I'm finding as I work with younger people, they talk about really specific anime comic books and cartoons that I've never heard of. And I have to write them down so I can go and do some research because it's like another language. So just really ask them about themselves and then remember what they say and then come back to those things. I think that can be really helpful. comment on, you know, on they have a character on their shirt, you know, let's talk about that. Who's that? What's that from? I like that. Try to avoid, well, when I was your age. Don't do that. They don't care. Promise. Whether they're in foster care or just any kind of young person in your life, promise they don't care about anything that happened that you did when you were their age.
Right.
And I think when there's a conversation that comes up, this is probably the most valuable tool in my toolbox. When a conversation comes up and you can tell maybe there is some desire to share, or maybe there's some woundedness that's kind of starting to surface, don't be afraid of the silence. Be okay with the tension, sit in the silence, and this is the most valuable tool. When they pause and they're not really sure what to go do next, just look at them and say more. Just that, just say more. Don't say more about why that hurts, say more about that experience, just let it be so open, they can choose. But like Dr. Natalie mentioned, they just want us to listen, right? So if you say things like, say more, then you're meeting almost every need they have just in a 2-word phrase. That's probably my most valuable asset when I'm talking to young people. And I think a lot of times in our world, adults and kids and everybody, we just talk to talk about ourselves. Or we just listen so that we can prep and rehearse for what we will say next, more than to have something to say or to share wisdom or to know how you're going to relate or what story you can tell about yourself next. Just listen to hear and to understand and say more.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa, this is Jennifer. Kind
Yeah.
of off of what you were just sharing, do you recommend, if you have experienced trauma in your childhood as well, sharing part of that with these girls just so that they can feel more relatable to you?
I think maybe yes, but that for sure would need to come later. And I think maybe like just knowing how much is okay to share, because they're not there to be our counselors, you know? So we have to know what's okay to share and what's not. And I think just overall in our life, it's beneficial if we know we're sharing from a place of complete healing, not of a place where wounds might still be open. I think that's what gets people in trouble sometimes. When they share, when they're not healed over, when maybe they still have that wound is still open, maybe it's festering a little bit. Maybe if you mess with it too much, it's going to get irritated again. So kind of knowing ourselves enough to know, are we fully healed in this? Or is it still a little raw? Because if it's still a little raw, it's not for you to share, even if it's the most applicable situation there is. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sitting in this silence because we're on her clock. Questions, concerns, comments? Anything that she says, wow, I never even thought about that.
Well, I personally really appreciate this. Again, long time ago, met different women that were incarcerated, and then not knowing a thing of what I was doing, just going. And didn't realize how many times I was misunderstood when you're trying to say something, but you don't realize their context is so different, that they heard something so different from what you even thought you said. So maybe can you add more about, because you want the interaction, but asking questions, or how do you help check that they heard what you thought was really positive you said, but their filter might, in fact, I remember telling a group once, somehow I was talking about in the Bible about foolish choices and good choices, and I asked a question and they said, yeah, you just, we're all fools. And I went, oh my gosh, I did not at all ever meant to say anything like that. And she wasn't even mad. She just went on to come up with something kind of positive. But the way she heard what I said really was an eye opener that I never forgot. Like, pay attention to what you said versus what you think you said or what they heard. So how do you help gauge that your communication is going the way you think it is?
Yeah,
Certainly by reaction, but
sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, I had to write up one of my employees yesterday for this exact thing. I think it's, you know, knowing our motivation is incredibly important. But I think in addition to knowing our motivation and why we're saying something, we have to be very acutely aware to how that's being received. And so I think even if something's happening and you're saying something you think it's really positive and encouraging or relatable, and you see maybe their physical disposition change, their countenance changes on their face, their body language. And I would say maybe just quick, instead of feeling, sometimes when we feel nervous, we talk more. I say, don't do that, talk less. And then just say, am I saying what makes sense? I'm not really sure. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Do you know what I'm trying to talk about? I've just kind of gotten into this pattern of saying, hey, does that make sense? Finding some people think that means I'm calling them stupid, which is not ever my intent, right? But just kind of checking me like, does that make sense? Sometimes I feel like up here it gets a little twisted. So kind of acknowledging that and not being afraid if there is like a clear disconnect between what you're saying and the way that it's received. I will often say, please don't hear me say what I'm not saying. Please don't hear me say what I am not saying. This is what I said. This is what I meant. I think maybe what you're hearing me say is this, and I didn't mean that, and I didn't intend that, and I'm sorry that it came off like that. But that phrase, please don't hear me say what I'm not saying, I use quite frequently.
thank you.
Lisa, the other Lisa asked, says, I so appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing and answering all these questions. Can we freely share our faith with them?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think it has to come in time. Anything has to come in time. And I think the best answer to that is no, not until they ask. And that could be something Dr. Natalie helps navigate a little bit more from her sphere of reference from this. But I think if we're too quick to share our faith, then it's going to look like we are only engaging with them because we have an agenda. And that sucks, right? That sucks.
My direction to the mentors has always been, you share through your example. You share by the way you respond. I had one girl I was with that, you know, went a summer break and I came back in the fall and she was like, you came back. And I was like, well, yeah, I told you I was coming back. Keeping your word, being where you said you're going to be, doing what you said you're going to do, you know, don't make promises that you're not sure you can keep. And that example will oftentimes lead them to ask you, or at least open the door for you to be able to say, you know. I had one girl who, I don't know how, but from the very beginning, I found out that she was saved. And so immediately all of our sessions started, ended, incorporated. It was all about, okay, well, you're filled with the Holy Spirit, so we're going to do that a little bit differently. But that was, I think that was the only, or the first time, especially with someone that young, that I had that opportunity. But other than that, you know, the word sometimes, you know, I have to make sure that I'm not physically or visibly glaring every time it comes out. And then it got to the point where they'd say, oh, sorry, Dr. Natalie. Oh, sorry, Dr. E. It's like, oh, okay, you know, that's your language. But you know, can we use a different word? Can we find a different way to say it? But even that came later on. Initially, it was like, just be who you are and know that I'm not judging you. I don't have any preconceived notions. I don't, you know, you're not bad because, you know, your vocabulary is limited, which has always been my approach to, well, that's why I use that word, because it could be an adjective, an adverb, a noun, or whatever. Yeah, you know, you're listening, you're connecting, you're modeling what it is, and recognizing that you may be the only Jesus that they see, because what's in their life is everything, you know, everything different. Jenny, did you want to ask a question before you left? She says she has to run.
No, I think I've got a pretty good handle on everything that's been said so far.
Okay.
So I think I'm good, but thank you very much.
Thanks
I
for
appreciate
joining.
your time today. I'm
Thank
sorry I have to run.
I know. And so according to the clock on the wall, we're ready to move into the next segment, but I did want to give you every opportunity to ask Lisa anything else that came to mind. And if it comes to mind later, shoot me an email and I'll shoot it to Lisa because she's,
Yep.
Natalie, I got one question.
Go ahead.
Lisa, could you speak to that piece of the foster care stigma and the experience of wanting to keep that a secret? And I know you spoke from a position of internal, which was so profound. I had not really thought about that. I've been thinking about it from the outside in, the stigma that's placed on girls and boys and kids who are in foster care. Well, they don't want nobody to know. But I never thought about it from the inside out. Could you speak a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I think just knowing the way that we internalize our journey is different for every person. And because that was mine, that doesn't mean that's going to be everyone's, but it's going to come with its own air of just be cautious, right? Of what this means to them. I've met people that have spent time in foster care that really view it as they were robbed. They were robbed of their family experience because they couldn't just stay with their parents who, for whatever reason, right? So they feel like something was taken from them. But I think just, kind of going back to not assuming we know how they feel and just giving them space and kind of just being respectful of the way in which we share our stories, that it's their journey and it's theirs to share in whatever space or time frame they feel most comfortable with, and just letting them have that space. Yeah.
You're muted, Donna.
Okay. I have one more ask. I have a niece who's just now learning about foster care and that experience for a school project of hers. Could you speak to her about what it's like, or just to open up her eyes about what this experience is? Because any one of her classmates or her friends in the neighborhood could be going through a foster care experience and not saying a word.
Yeah, I think, that's a really big question. I think I might ask that we table it, and feel free to send me a note if we need to have another conversation after this with more specific questions. I'm super happy to, but that's a really good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, last go round. Lisa, I cannot thank you enough. I'm so
Absolutely.
grateful that I can always depend on you. I'm gonna tell this one last story. We were doing our annual fundraising breakfast, and somehow I knew that the keynote that was scheduled was like, I don't really know. And so I'm sitting next to Lisa at the head table. And I leaned over to her about 7:15. I said, Lisa, I may need you to do the keynote. Lisa said, hey, I'm here. At 7:30, I said, Lisa, you're up. Lisa went up and did the keynote for that breakfast. I told her she did, the only thing that was missing from what turned out to feel like an altar call was a guitar. But she stayed steady. She stays prayed up, and she did a fabulous job. And it turns out that the speaker had the wrong date or whatever, but just knowing that Lisa was there, it was just peaceful. I'm like, okay, you can do it, my friend, because I've heard her speak. I've seen her do insane things. I've watched her or them get banned from SPU from leaving too much sparkle on the rugs. But it's an experience. Yep. And when you're working with a different population that you know nothing about, you learn so much because all of our journeys are different. Lisa, again, thank you. Enjoy that and your event, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, friends. I appreciate you, and we'll just keep this party going, yeah?
Keep it going.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. So now I want you guys to hear from Dr. Jantz, who is the founder of A Place of Hope. And like I said, he was not able to be live because of the Wi-Fi not being secure where he is. And so this is the video that he prepared before he left.
Hi, I'm Dr. Greg Jantz, founder of the center, A Place of Hope. I have been in the helping professions, it seems amazing to say this, now for 38 years. I want to especially acknowledge Dr. Natalie and the great vision here. I've known her for many years, and when she locks onto a goal and her commitment level and her faithfulness, 2 words, Dr. Natalie, committed and faithful. Great things happen. So it's good for me to be with you today. I want to share a few thoughts around the idea of mentoring and mentorship. And I've given this some thought. I've jotted down some notes. And I want you to know that I would prefer to be right there with you or with everybody. But I'm in a place right now where there is subpar Wi-Fi, and I did not want to risk anything. So here you go. Today I want to share about mentoring. But you know, one of the things, first of all, that a mentor does for us, it helps us change our direction. I had a tough time, high school in particular, and growing up. I guess middle school, junior high, high school was tough for me. And I did have a youth pastor mentor person who really pursued me. And I remember many times this pursuit of me, which I found at the time very irritating. But I was struggling. I wasn't doing well in any regard, or even academically. My parents had sent me away to a summer church camp, I think it was. And this youth pastor that had shown some interest in me, and really I was an unwilling mentoree, but he had stayed and just to influence my life. Here he was the speaker for this week, and he followed me around during all the off time, and he kept calling me my name and pursuing me and saying, Greg, he said. And at the end of this camp, by the way, I was just the kid that would put the firecrackers in the campfire. I wasn't over the edge, but he kept a close eye on me. The conclusion of this camp was a cross-country type run. And I remember all week and his engagement in me. Now, mentorship should go both ways. I hadn't come aboard to really allow him to mentor me, but I was, and this is what happens, is I was allowing influence, and his influence in my life. And he was following me around this camp, and he kept saying, I think you should do this run, this cross-country run. I think you'll do really well. I think you ought to do this. And then he would always say, Greg, I believe in you. Greg, I believe in you. And I at that time, I was not at all athletic. I have never at that time ever did running or a fun run or any kind of a run in my life up to that point. Here I am just about to go into my senior year of high school, and I decided on that last day of camp just to kind of get in there and do this, because he kept saying, Greg, I believe in you. And I did. I lined up, and the gun went off, and I ran and I ran and I ran. If you ever seen the movie with Forrest Gump, that was me. I didn't look behind me. I just kept running and running, and I kept hearing, I believe in you. Greg, I believe in you. And so it went. And I kept going. I have to tell you, though it's been many, many years ago, I had no idea that I was the first one across the finish line. I was the first one across the finish line, and all I could hear in my mind was, Greg, I believe in you. You can do this. That was a turning point for me to allow him to mentor my life and to mentor me. A mentor has great value that can change the whole direction or modify a direction of our life. And that's what happened to me. I went from failure and academic struggles to becoming I believe they called it the Outstanding Student of the Year, my senior year of high school. That gave me the belief in myself because he believed in me and because I had a success. Though, great surprise, I was able to run and win, not look behind me. But I remember, wow. And it set me up for success in college and staying the course. And 38 years ago, my wife and I founded the Center of Place of Hope, and we're a 53-bed partial hospital program that serves folks from all over the country. We're known for our work with anxiety and depression. And I just finished it actually ended up being my 40th book. And it all started with somebody who believed in me, and then I allowed mentorship in my life. And so a mentor, this is exciting because a mentor has influence when we allow it. A mentor is a relationship that there needs to be trust. And, ultimately he could tell me and give me feedback, and I received it because I held him in a place of influence. Not necessarily a place of power or control, but a place of influence. And so there is a difference. When we allow mentoring, we allow influence. But then I'm thinking about, okay, mentor versus enabler. A mentor versus an enabler. What does that look like? Okay. Well, we need to talk about what mentorship is not, and what, with great intent, how we can kind of lean over and we become an enabler, or we become codependent, and it's no longer a mentoring relationship. It's subtle how that happens, but here's a few thoughts as we think about, okay, how do I stay a healthy mentor? Well, number one, mentorship, or me as a mentor, is not the rescuer. No, we don't do the rescuing as a mentor. Sometimes there are some difficulties that have to be learned, and those difficulties come at a personal price for the person, because they don't learn how to get back up until they have fallen and realize that they can get back up without us being the one to rescue. Helping and rescuing is different. I can help somebody, give guidance, feedback, but if I'm rescuing, I'm protecting them from the opportunity that they need in order to learn, and grow. Number two, just a few thoughts here as we talk about mentorship, is a mentor is not a person that says, oh, let me show you how to do this. Okay, which what I'm saying is a mentor is not anybody that takes control and says, look, let me show you my way, or let me show you how you should do this. A mentor has a quality of love and acceptance, but that doesn't imply agreement, and it doesn't mean I'm going to do the work for you as a mentor, or I'm not going to tell you how you should do things. I'm going to probably give you options, give you things to think about, things to consider. But the opportunity for a person who mentored, and me as a mentor, if I step in and tell them how they should do something, I'm borderline controlling them, and I could disable them from the opportunity to find out what they can do. I did not know that I actually could run. Okay. By the way, that started a whole pattern of me doing, we call them fun runs, but doing running events, doing, quite a few half marathons. Never went really crazy with it, but I embraced it and realized I could do this. And it wasn't because he said you should do this. All right. Number three, a mentor, and as a mentor, we are not past oriented. We're not bringing up the past with a person in order to say things like, well, if you would have done it this way, you wouldn't be, or if, so look for the ifs. If you would have only, It's kind of like, well, as a mentor, I've got great wisdom, and look, if you would have only and you, done it this way. So a mentor doesn't point to the past. A mentor helps a person look forward to the present. And when you come into our main building here at the Center of Place of Hope, on the wall as you come in is the verse from Jeremiah 29:11 that says, in essence, that we're promised a future and a hope. Well, hope comes when we have a plan. Now, a mentor helps individuals discover their plans, supports them, but doesn't tell them what their plan is. Your plan for your life should be this. That's not the role of a mentor. A mentor, again, can change the direction of a person's life. And we tend to walk with somebody as a mentor for a season, and then that person graduates on. So mentorship is a season of a person's life. It's not really somebody that's going to walk with them. Maybe you'll be friends forever, but not walk with them in a mentorship role forever. I remember there was a mentor as I was going to college I really looked up to. I read his books, looked up to him. I got up enough courage to ask him if I could meet with them. I ended up having lunch with him at that time. This was incredible. I couldn't believe it. He actually had time for me. And we developed a relationship, but that relationship had a natural transition point, an ending. And he knew that he had influenced my life. And I remember after a meeting walking down the hall, and there was a poster that had some parachuters coming down, as I recall. And he turned to that and said, I make it my point not to help people who are already soaring. You're soaring now, and you don't need me. And that was the last. That was the last. That season was over. That really was the last time I met with him, because he booted me out of the nest. That's what a mentor does. A mentor realizes when a person's at a point where they now can take the next step and need to take the next step. All right, number 4, checking my list here. Number 4, we as a mentor don't tie our value or our self-esteem to what another person does or doesn't do. Well, what's that look like? It can be frustrating sometimes because you go, well, if she would only listen to me, or I could really help her. And you get frustrated, and sometimes as a mentor we can feel like we're failing. Well, look, she's not doing that great, or he's not doing that great, but we're tying it to our own self-worth. So we want to separate that. Mentorship is not a direct, that sounds like codependency, and there's a line that can be crossed. All right, as you look at this, go, okay, as a mentor, how should I feel when I'm influencing another person's life? For me, here's a couple checkpoints. One is a sense of gratitude. I am grateful that I have this opportunity, and I'm excited about what this person is learning. I'm excited about their future. I do see that positive future for them. So that's really important. Now, if I'm working with somebody in a mentorship role and I no longer feel that it's a burden, I don't think they're going to make it, okay, then we probably need to look for another mentor. But gratitude and passion for their future. All right. There is also something that a successful mentor carries with them, and it's this positive, I wrote down positive perspective of hope for their future. And I have an enthusiasm for their future. Now, I can teach them things. There's skill sets, there's leadership influence, there's life skills that I can work with somebody on, but I'm never telling them what to do. I'm believing in them, I'm believing in their future, and I'm enthusiastic about their future. Does that sound good? All right. Now, there are some times where we need to really come alongside with empathy and compassion for a person that's really we're mentoring and they're struggling. It's real. It could be a struggle of depression, it could be a lot of anxiety, it could be a sense of just feeling overwhelmed, and to really walk with them. Again, we're not their counselor, we're not their psychologist or psychiatrist, we're not that, but we can walk with them. And this is so important that we keep the roles clean. One of the books that I want to mention that is a gift to you. This book, Am I Codependent? I co-authored this with Dr. Tim Clinton, who's the president of the American Christian Counseling Association. But there's a line that gets fuzzy that you can cross, and it is that enabling, and then it's that codependency. And in this book, right up front, in here, I've got the questionnaire, how to know if you're codependent. How to know if you're codependent. And that's, well, it might be important. At the end of our time here, I'm going to give you my email address. And all I need is who to send this book to, and I'll have our shipping department send out as a gift. This is a gift to you, because I believe we as mentors, we are walking a line between empowering and really ultimately disempowering. And that disempowering is when I begin to enable, I begin to get frustrated, I begin to feel the pressure, I begin to feel their issues too deeply. I begin to feel like, oh, I have to fix them. See, that's really, as a mentor, those are what I'll call some toxic thoughts, because that's not the role of a mentor. And I do believe that mentoring, when we are a mentor, for me, and those times that I have been, it's inspiring for me that it to see, and I think part of what keeps me going in the work we do here is I do see people's lives change. I do read their feedback from their experience in working with us. And when I read that and I see videos and testimonials that they've created, I go, that's what keeps me going. I go, I realize I need that feedback loop. That's part of how I'm wired, so that I know what we're doing is making a difference. And I think as a mentor, we need to know what we're doing is making a difference. And we want to have wisdom as we approach mentorship, because wisdom means there's times I need to pause and not be impulsive or reactive. There's times where I need to pause and really use this frontal lobe, this prefrontal cortex. You know, that's the home of executive function. That's the home of wise decisions. And sometimes we can get frustrated, and it's like it bypasses that. And so that's why I say a lot of mentorship is pausing, assessing, praying for wisdom, because that influence is so great it can change the direction of a person's life. Now, you know, the first person there that really spoke into my life, I have no idea where that person is. I have no idea if that person's alive. But many times, in fact, I tried to find this person once. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the influence you had on my life at a critical time, because you changed the course and direction of my life. So, have a positive perspective. have a perspective of hope for that person. Part of what we want to do is speak words of hope. And there's times where we need to be reminded of that, because mentoring at times, I think, can be frustrating. It can't stay in that mode of frustration. My wife, LaFawn, a while back, it's probably been a year ago, put a notification on all of our devices. So my computer screen, my cell phone, and every day this notification comes up and it says 1 person a day. 1 person a day? Wow, what does that mean? Okay. And I said, LaFawn, it pops up every day. What does 1 person a day mean? And she says, well, that's a reminder that God's going to send at least 1 person a day, maybe more, but 1 person a day that may need something, whether it's a meal, whether it's a good word, but be aware there'll be at least 1 person a day that God will send your way. And I thought, wow. And I have seen so many examples. Okay, I'm going to keep my heart and mind set towards 1 person a day. It could be the person you're mentoring, and the difference that that can make. When we're able to move beyond our own self-absorption, our own self-issues, into a mode of service to others, we really have set ourselves up to be of real help. And so if we're cloudy in our own hurt, anger, resentment, addictions, our own burdens are so great that we're self-absorbed, we're limited in our capacity to be of great help to others. So move it to God has 1 person a day and probably more. Okay, they're out there, and it could be the person that we are mentoring. Thank you for letting me have just a few minutes with you today. And I know there's a lot of questions around, okay, how do I make sure that I stay healthy, right? Here's what I want you to do. If you email me at drjantz, that's Dr. Jantz, at aplaceofhope.com, I will have this book sent to you as my gift. Thank you, Dr. Natalie, for letting me have some time today. And onward. Mentors change the direction of a person's life.
Wow, that's the 3rd time I've watched it, and every time, I mean, if you could see my face, it probably seemed like I wasn't paying attention. Every time I watch it, something else clicks in and something else says, oh my gosh, and so I get into that zone. But Dr. Jantz, I mean, if you just a few key points. As mentors, you hold that place of influence, and you don't always know what that influence looks like and when it's going to come out, but just knowing that that's what you have gives you, or should be another place of your being grateful that is a position God has placed you in, to help and not rescue. It'd be easy because we're adults, because sometimes we've been through stuff that one of our mentees are going through. And you could say, hey, look, let me tell you what to do, because I went through it. You have to help them because that's how they learn. I've often heard the example of the chick that's trying to get out of the shell. And if you break that shell for them to release them, they don't develop the muscles and the skill set that they need to survive, and so they die. So as painful as it may be to watch a mentee go through stuff, know that they're learning, they're growing, and all things being equal, maybe they won't do that again to end up in that situation. And then last but not least, our foundational scripture is Jeremiah 29:11. And that positive perspective of hope. When you've lost hope, there's absolutely nothing to keep you going because you're hopeless. And regardless of what we may have gone through in our individual lives, I would doubt that any of us had gotten to the point where there was just absolutely no hope. And if we did, we knew or had the ability to have someone speak into our lives or to remember the words that we've learned as we're walking this Christian walk to know, no, there is hope. I am going to be hopeful through this all. So I'm going to put up the screen with Dr. Jantz's email, because he is a giver and he wants to make that a gift for all of us. And so if you, and that's pretty much not it, is it? Come on, there it is. So if you want the book, which I would recommend that you all get, just send an email to Dr. Jantz at aplaceofhope.com. Let him know that you were on the video and that you'd like him to send you the book, and he will send it out. Any last minute questions, comments, anything that you guys want to share? Hi, Mike.
Can you put that inside of the chat, the address, because I missed it.
Jason just dropped it in the chat, so it's in the chat.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Jason,
okay.
He was faster than I was.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Any closing remarks? Well, I want to thank you guys for spending this Saturday morning, this time with us, just hearing about what mentoring looks like, getting some lived experience information from Lisa. I would really recommend you get her book because her story is incredible. Like she said, from 7 years old, she had been taking care of herself and she went through stuff. And because she had convinced herself that she was unlovable, she did everything, and I mean everything she could, to keep that reality real. And so the claws out. We heard just recently about the young lady that was shot. I forgot what part of the city it was in. And what they included in the report was that she had been in foster care. And so where sometimes that adds to the myth that, oh, well, you know, those foster care kids, that's what they do. The other side of that is, what had she been through to the point where she was living with her claws out, and violence was the only way she knew to respond and react to situations that she was going through. So as we decide, or as we walk into that mentorship role, recognizing that we not only can change and help the life of that young lady, but we generally will change the trajectory of her life. One last story that Lisa shared with us, and I can share this because she shared it at one of our functions. So when she was 12 years old, her vision, her thought process was, how can I get pregnant so that I can get Section 8 housing and stay in the system? We intentionally at Celebrate 18 have an area where the girls can do vision boards. We need to let them know that the vision that God has for them has nothing to do with Section 8 housing or staying within the system. And we do that, like I said, by modeling what it is God has shown us and what He tells us that our particular mentee needs. So, any last minute comments, questions, concerns, feedback? Hi, Sam. Lenora, you unmuted.
It's just very, very good. Should be. Can you hear me now?
I
Oh,
can
the mic's just too far away.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. It was very good information. Thank you. Very, very good information. Just question will be, and I probably missed something at the very, very beginning, kind of what the timing is for potential next steps or when you want to know decisions or any of those timings.
Well, I'm glad you asked because I have that information right here. Not here, right here. We will do a mentor training on June 5th. And at that particular session, we will actually go through the mentor manual that we put together that walks through the expectations of our mentoring program, how we're going to keep track of what's going on, how the matching process works, and different things that we've gleaned from other manuals as to how to run the program. And then the ideal is that we have mentors in place in time for Celebrate 18, because we want to be able to connect mentors with the girls at that event. So on June 19th, we'll have a volunteer meeting with all of those that have agreed to not only be mentors, but want to volunteer with the organization as a whole, or with the organization at Celebrate 18, and go through all of what that looks like. I also want to reiterate that your attending these sessions does not imply commitment. Like I said, I want you to have the information, but there will come a time in June where you'll have an opportunity to make a decision. Is this something that God has placed on your heart to do? And where that is important is that when you get those rough days, if you don't know that this is what God has for you, you'll bail. You'll be out of there like, I'm out. You know, they're not paying me enough to do this. But when you hit those days and you can turn and say, Father, you knew I was going to hit this day when you called me to do this. So you need to walk me through it. Tell me how to get through it. Because if it was left to my own device, I'd be out. But when you know that you know that you know that it's a God assignment, you stick through it. You stick with it. So that's what the upcoming schedule looks like. Of course, an email will go out so that you'll have it a little closer to the date. But again, thank you guys so much. I'm giving you back 15 minutes that you can enjoy the sun and the rest of your Saturday. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns that I can answer. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Nell.
What? I didn't hear, Lydia, was that you? What did you say?
They were talking in the background.
Sorry, it was in the background, but I just want to
okay.
say, could you
Okay.
hear me? But thank you so much. This was great, and it was beautiful to see all the people, all the faces, familiar faces.
Yeah, it's an
Thank you.
old
Great
story
training.
for some of you guys. Yep. Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Now I've got to see whether or not that recording thing worked.
It did. I could see it up there.
Okay, well, now I need to turn it off. How do I do that?